The arrogant black belt instructor thought the shy little girl would be the perfect punchline, but just seconds later he was neatly laid out on the mat, not by a powerful strike, but by a quiet lock from a girl no one had expected. It all began when a girl named Elena Holt, small, quiet, and sitting alone in the corner of the dojo, caught the attention of a newly arrived instructor. With an ego far greater than his skill, he thought this would be light entertainment for the entire dojo, a playful sparring match, an easy laugh. But the joke quickly became a moment no one in the room would ever forget, because behind that thin frame and expressionless gaze was a legacy forged in silence, disciplined sacrifice, and the memories of war. In her quiet way, Elena didn't just react, she controlled. She didn't strike to win, but to remind everyone true strength doesn't come from noise, but from quiet preparation. And that very instructor, along with everyone who had judged Elena by her appearance, was about to learn the most humbling lesson of his life. "I'm so glad you're here. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you believe that true strength doesn't come from muscle or shouting, but from quiet discipline and unwavering focus, don't forget to like and subscribe." Now let's dive into the extraordinary journey of Elena Holt. It was Saturday morning at Westwind Martial Arts, and sunlight streamed through tall windows onto the faded green mats. The air smelled of liniment tiger balm and the dried sweat of relentless training sessions. Sneakers scuffed the floor, and Coach Ramsey's commands echoed like a steady drumbeat. In a hidden corner behind a rack of old gloves and torn training pads, Elena Holt sat by herself. She looked to be about 10, small and lean, wearing a loose gray hoodie and clean black leggings. No GI, no belt. Her brown hair was loosely braided, falling over her shoulder. Her eyes quietly followed every movement on the mat, not with surprise or excitement, just silent observation. No one paid her any attention, until Troy Mitchell walked in. Troy, 26, had been a black belt since 18, a former state champion known not only for his technique, but for an ego bigger than his muscles. He waved at Coach Ramsey and tossed his gear bag beside the ring. As usual, he looked for a lightweight target to show off. His gaze swept over the students and stopped at Elena. "Hey, who brought their little sister to class?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the dojo. A few parents chuckled awkwardly, a few kids giggled. Elena didn't react. Coach Ramsey narrowed his eyes at Troy. He knew this type young instructors who hadn't yet learned humility. Troy walked over, bent down, hands on hips, voice mocking, "You training or just here for the free Wi-Fi?" Elena looked up, a slight blink, then looked away. "Tell you what," Troy clapped his hands. "One light round. Me and the little one. Nobody gets hurt. I'll go easy." A murmur spread from the corner. Coach Ramsey hesitated. "Troy, this isn't a game. Just for fun, coach." 1 minute. From the far end, Elena stood up. No rush, no defiance, just stood. She walked barefoot onto the mat, no gloves, no ties, no words. Just a still presence like water beginning to flow beneath a thin layer of ice. Troy squinted, raising a brow. "All right, princess, show me what you got." In the back row, an older man sat quietly. His army jacket was worn, his face deeply lined, unsmiling, silent. In his hand was a small piece of fabric, a gold-trimmed Navy SEALs triangle patch, neatly folded, lying beside an old photo. A woman in combat gear holding a child on her shoulder, her long braid tossed by the wind. The child's eyes were just like Elena's. The man didn't take his eyes off the mat. No cheers, just watching. Coach Ramsey raised his hand. 1 minute light contact only. Keep it clean. Respect the mat. I always respect it. Troy smirked. No bow. Elena bowed. The match began. Troy lunged in fast, throwing a light punch to test the distance. Elena didn't move. The second punch came quicker. Still no reaction. Troy laughed loudly. You could at least blink. He threw a low kick, not to connect, just to intimidate. Elena shifted, stepping aside like a breeze brushing past a leaf. When he turned around, she was behind him. Troy's smile faded. This time he threw a real punch. Elena didn't dodge with force but with angle, as if she had done this thousands of times. She used no power, just precision. Her hand twisted his wrist fast, exact, silent. Troy's arm froze. 1 inch more and his elbow would snap. Elena let go, stepping back. She had never tried to defeat. She simply controlled. When the ending bell rang, the room was silent. Troy flushed, stepping back. "Lucky shot," he muttered, but no one laughed. From the back row, the old man quietly placed the small dog tag beside him on the bench. It didn't belong to him. It was too light, too small. The dojo slowly emptied after a noisy morning. Everything returned to its usual rhythm, the smell of tiger balm, the sound of gloves clashing, and the shuffle of sneakers in the corners. But for Coach Ramsey, nothing felt the same. He stood quietly by the mat, staring at the girl who had just put Troy Mitchell in his place without using violence, just with a steady gaze and a technique he had never seen in a child. She was now sitting back in the corner as if nothing unusual had happened. Ramsey walked over. He knelt on one knee so his eyes were level with Elena's. "That wrist lock earlier," he said softly. "Who taught you that Elena didn't look at him, Maria?" Her gaze drifted across the wall, then stopped at the last row of chairs where the man in the military jacket sat. "At home," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. Coach Ramsey turned and looked directly at the man who was still there, eyes fixed on Elena, not with the look of a stranger. Ramsey approached. "Are you her father?" The man shook his head. "No, I'm her guardian. Do you have a name?" "Conrad," he answered shortly. Ramsey lowered his voice. "That girl just demonstrated the technique of someone professionally trained. Not YouTube, not kids karate. That wrist lock. I've seen special ops use that." Conrad was silent, then placed a hand on his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small object wrapped in dark fabric. He unfolded it, a triangular Navy SEAL badge, old and slightly tarnished. "Her mother's," he said, eyes fixed on the cloth. "She was—" Coach Ramsey swallowed. "Military," Conrad nodded. "Captain Renee Holt. Call sign in her unit was Spectre 6, extraction specialist, KIA in Syria during an evac mission." Ramsey stepped back, slightly stunned. He had heard that name. Somewhere in hushed stories told by old soldiers, a lone woman who dragged 2 children and a wounded soldier out of a burning Humvee. A silent warrior who always led into fire. So, Elena is her daughter. Conrad didn't answer. He simply gave a small nod. His aged hands gently smoothed the badge before tucking it away. "She left the girl with me when she knew she wouldn't return." Coach Ramsey turned to look at Elena. She sat cross-legged, hands on her knees, eyes as calm as a still autumn lake. No sign of a child who had just embarrassed a grown martial arts instructor. "She once told me," Conrad said in a low voice, "don't train the girl. Let her live as a normal child." "Then why didn't you listen?" "I did. For the first 8 years. He paused, gaze distant. "But she remembers. She dreams of drills her mother never taught her. She asks me about combat breathing, about center of gravity, about silence. One day I saw her in the backyard, mimicking the 3-point movement routine exactly like her mother used to perform in NATO drills." Coach Ramsey sighed. "It's not instinct." "No," Conrad replied. "It's legacy." Just then Elena stood up. No one called, no signal given, but it was as if she knew they were talking about her. Conrad looked at her without judgment, only with heavy eyes. "She's not normal, but she doesn't want to be a warrior. She just won't allow her mother's memory to be forgotten." Ramsey nodded. His gaze changed now. He stepped closer to Elena. "Would you like to train here?" She was silent, then quietly said, "I'm not here to fight anyone. I just want to continue where my mom left off." Coach Ramsey froze. For the first time, he didn't see talent in the girl's eyes. He saw sorrow, deep and still like a storm yet to rise. Then he said firmly, We'll start from the beginning, not for fame, not for medals, but for what should never be forgotten." Elena nodded. Conrad stood hand still clutching the old cloth in his jacket pocket. In the pale golden light of midday streaming through the dojo windows, he knew the wind of Spectre 6 had not died. It had only changed form, and now it had returned. News of the little girl who brought down Troy Mitchell with a gentle wrist lock spread through Westwind martial arts like wildfire through dry grass. There were no videos, no photos, but what people had witnessed was enough to make the story travel farther than any social media post. A girl named Elena Holt, small, quiet, wearing no belt, no uniform, had left a black belt instructor red-faced in front of a crowd. Some were impressed, some curious, but others skeptical. Among them was Melissa Kwan, assistant coach, former Texas state kickboxing champion known for her strict standards and disbelief in so-called prodigies. "We can't go idolizing kids who know a trick or two," she said to Coach Ramsey as the two watched Elena practicing footwork at the far end of the mat. "She's good, no doubt, but let's not forget true martial arts is about discipline and endurance, not flashes of brilliance." Ramsey didn't argue. He simply observed Elena, who moved through each stance, each shift of balance with the grace of a silent wind slipping through dry fields. No flash, no rush, but each step chillingly precise. It was Tuesday afternoon after school hours, and the dojo was quieter. The late sunlight cast long shadows across the mat through the windows. "Let's try a technical sparring round," Melissa suggested. "No hard hits, no scoring, just to see where she really stands." Coach Ramsey turned to her. "You sure?" "I'm sure. I'll go easy." Ramsey said nothing more. He stepped onto the mat and clapped twice. Elena paused her drill and looked up. "Elena, would you like to do some flow drills?" The girl gave a small nod. Melissa stepped in from the right, wrapped her gloves, and nodded at Elena. "I'll be gentle," she said. "This is just to gauge your level, not a fight." Elena bowed without a word. She took position, low stance, open hands. Weight slightly shifted to the left. The flow drill began. Melissa approached cautiously, using basic techniques: jab low, kick pivot, everything textbook, precise, readable. Elena didn't react early. She waited. Only when Melissa subtly shifted her hips forward, just before launching a kick, did Elena slip into the opening. Her two fingers brushed gently against Melissa's sternum, then she backed away instantly. Melissa hesitated. Her eyes changed from technical to alert. This time she picked up speed. Her next kick was faster, higher, but Elena didn't dodge. She caught Melissa's leg as gently as a mother lifting a child's toy and set it down softly. Not a sound. An audible gasp came from across the room. Melissa wasn't angry, but she was now serious. She changed stance. Through a spinning elbow and advanced reflex test few under 15 could handle. Elena ducked low at the perfect angle, the perfect moment. Not by instinct, but as if she had calculated it a second ahead. Then she stood still, exhaling calmly. Melissa's breath quickened. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She removed her gloves, stepped forward, and knelt to Elena's level. "You don't have to prove anything anymore," she said softly. "You already have." Elena looked at her, her eyes still like a lake before a breeze. "I'm not proving anything," she replied. "I'm just listening." In that moment, no one said another word. On the bench behind them, Mr. Conrad gave a slow nod, his gaze drifting into the past. Spectre 6. The soldier who once crossed the threshold between life and death never fought to show off. She only appeared when needed and vanished when peace returned. Now, her daughter Elena didn't need to defeat anyone to become anything. She only had to stand still, and the entire dojo fell silent. Thursday afternoon, a steady rain fell outside. Westwind Martial Arts was quiet, with only the sound of wind brushing against the glass doors and the rhythmic padding of bare feet on the mats. Elena was practicing the three-point movement drill not like a student, but like it was a sacred ritual. Every step, every breath, every pivot was uncannily precise. Coach Ramsey stood at the edge of the mat, arms crossed, not interrupting, just watching. The door opened softly. A man entered, rain-speckled coat, weathered face, but steady eyes. It was Conrad, but this time he wasn't alone. In his hand was a thin envelope sealed with an old security stamp. He placed it on the reception counter without a word, but his eyes never left Elena. "What's that?" Ramsey asked, leaning slightly. "Letters from an old teammate," Conrad replied, his voice low. "Sent to me after 11 years. From someone who fought beside her mother in her final mission." Elena walked over. No questions. She simply held out her hand to receive the envelope. She opened it slowly, as if what lay inside was not paper, but the past awakening. Inside was a yellowed photograph. In it stood a woman in a flak jacket, dirt on her face, hair tightly braided, holding a radio. Beside her, a man's face partially obscured, only his piercing eyes visible. Scribbled on the back were the words, "Trust no one but trust this." Taped beneath the photo was a small, unlabeled black USB drive. Coach Ramsey furrowed his brow. "What's on that thing?" Elena didn't answer. She walked quietly to a wooden bench in the corner, opened her backpack, and pulled out an encrypted tablet Conrad had once given her. She plugged in the USB. The screen lit up. A list of encrypted files appeared: Nightfire 03, Operation EVA, Thorn List, Survivor A12. Both Ramsey and Conrad were silent, drawn in. A video played grainy footage of an evacuation mission, smoke and fire thick in the air, gunfire ringing out. A woman, Captain Renee Holt, burst from a burning armored vehicle, carrying a crying child, shouting commands as she ran. Sweat and mud streaked her face. One hand gripped a weapon, the other cradled the child. The video froze just as they reached the helicopter, but in that moment, Elena didn't blink. The child in her arms. "That's Elena," Conrad said softly. No one argued, no one doubted. Coach Ramsey turned to him. "So this isn't just a story about a gifted kid, is it?" Conrad answered, "No. This is about a legacy a mother left behind, not medals but resolve." Silence in chaos. The dojo door opened again. This time a tall, firm-looking woman entered, navy blue suit, hair neatly pinned. She presented her badge. "Special Agent Margaret Voss, Department of Defense." Ramsey stood instinctively. Elena didn't back away. She wasn't even surprised. "We need to talk," Agent Voss said, her voice calm but heavy. "About my mother?" Elena asked. "Yes," Voss nodded. "The name Spectre 6 can no longer stay buried. Old enemies are stirring, and you're the last trace that remains." Ramsey stood frozen. "I know," Elena replied calmly. "I'm not training to fight. I'm training to survive." Voss looked at her, and for the first time a hint of softness appeared behind her professional gaze. "You're just a child. This isn't fair." Elena simply shook her head. "What's unfair is when someone sacrifices everything and gets forgotten." The words froze the room. Ramsey finally spoke. "This girl doesn't need a guide anymore. She's already on her path, and she's carrying a shadow too large for most adults. That's why we want to support her," Voss replied. "Maybe not directly, but let her know she's not alone." Elena didn't smile, but her eyes met Conrad's. An unspoken agreement exchanged in silence. "I'll be ready," she said, "not to strike first, but to never be knocked down again." Outside, the rain still tapped against the windows, but inside another storm was gathering, and Elena Holt, daughter of Spectre 6, was ready to face it. Friday morning. The sky was still dark, and dew clung to the windows of Westwind Martial Arts. Coach Ramsey arrived earlier than usual, a habit he couldn't quite explain. He turned on the lights, opened the windows, and swept the mats carefully as if preparing for a ceremony. Elena was already there. No one had called, no one had scheduled, but she always arrived before the sunlight. She stood in the center of the mat, eyes closed, breathing deeply through her belly, a control breathing drill her mother had once recorded in her journal. Breathe through the chaos. Calm is not absence of fear, it's the discipline to hold steady. No music, no audience. Just the steady rhythm of breath, the whisper of fabric on skin, and the distant echo of thunder. By mid-morning, the dojo began to fill up. Students gathered in small groups, but no one joked around anymore. Elena was no longer the strange girl in the gray hoodie. She was the center of gravity, but no one dared stare too long. Then he walked in. Cole Danner, 19, a new student. Broad shoulders, tight shirt, expensive shoes. The kind of confidence that came with ignorance. He had only heard fragmented stories about Elena, and like all the arrogant ones, he didn't believe what he hadn't seen. Heard this girl made Troy disappear for a week. He smirked as he walked toward the mat. Elena didn't respond. What's the secret? Just stand still and glare. A few students stepped back. Ramsey clenched his hands slightly, but he didn't stop it. Cole turned to the coach. Just one light round. Yeah, let's see how well she breathes under pressure. Coach Ramsey stepped onto the mat. He didn't say much, just nodded. 1 minute, no throws, no shots to the face. Elena bowed her head. Cole bounced in place, slapped his gloves, and inhaled, like he was gearing up for a championship. The bell rang. Cole charged in left hand, reaching rear foot, pivoting a textbook kickboxing opener. Elena didn't dodge. She stepped forward half a pace, planting her foot right in the break point of his attack line, precisely where his balance collapsed. Before Cole could realize what was happening, Elena raised 2 fingers and gently placed them on his throat. No push, no force, just contact. Cole froze. His punch evaporated midair. His whole body locked as if a cold current had surged through him. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The girl had already won, not with power, but with presence. Ramsey signaled the end. Cole stepped back, face flushed, pulling off his gloves with a mumbled lucky shot. Elena returned to her spot beneath a new display hanging in a rectangular frame. It was her mother's old trident badge mounted in oak wood, displayed behind the reception desk. No label, no announcement. It was just there, like Elena, quiet but impossible to ignore. That afternoon, the rain turned heavy. Inside the dojo, only Coach Ramsey, Elena, and Conrad remained. Elena was packing up her old backpack, faded and singed at one corner. Ramsey noticed a dark blue cloth square neatly hand-stitched with golden thread embroidered with 18 Ma Nemesis. "What's that patch?" he asked. Elena paused, then peeled back the flap. Beneath it was a Special Forces patch not publicly documented, one of the ghost squads rumored to have operated during the Brahmo campaign where her mother was killed. "It was my mother's," Elena said. "She told me, don't pass down the symbol, pass down the purpose." Coach Ramsey exhaled, slow and deep. "You don't train to perform." Elena shook her head. "I train so I won't have to use it." That answer left him silent. Elena walked back to the mat, saying no goodbyes. She assumed the quiet hand stance, unaffiliated with any school. Shoulders relaxed, hands open, wrists, soft eyes angled forward. She moved, smooth, intentional. Every pivot and weight shift was clean, nothing wasted. At the end of the sequence, she stepped up to the 120-pound Muay Thai heavy bag, turned in a gentle arc, and struck it with the palm of her hand. No loud smack, but enough for the chain to creak and the bag to sway like a deep-toned bell. Ramsey looked up, a slight shiver running through him, not from the force, but from the precision, from the meaning. Elena turned, said nothing, just bowed her head. She's no longer a misunderstood little girl, he thought. She was a quiet reminder that some battles don't need to be won. They just need to never be forgotten. And so the story of Elena Holt comes to a close, a journey of honoring legacy through quiet strength and unwavering resilience. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback and support are what inspire us to keep telling heartfelt, powerful stories of humanity and inner strength like this one. See you again on the next journey.